Welcome to Smarty Plants, a Minnesota Department of Agriculture podcast informing the public about invasive species that affect our environment and agricultural resources. My name is Jennifer Burrington, and I will be your host. Spiders come to mind around Halloween, where everything spooky and creepy is wrapped into the holiday. But why do spiders and other arachnids have that creepy, crawly reputation, even more than their insect cousins? Here to explore the ways that spiders and arachnids are often misunderstood, how they affect our environment, and in particular, how they can help keep invasive insect species under control, are today's guests, Angie Ambourn of the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and Chad Hiens of Bethany Lutheran College. Welcome to Smarty Plants. Angie Ambourn is an entomologist with the MDA Plant Protection Division. She's worked with the MDA for 10 years now and holds a bachelor's degree in biology as well as a master's in entomology from the University of Minnesota Entomology Department. She's worked in entomology for over 20 years in Alaska, South Dakota, Wyoming, and now Minnesota, where she currently supervises a team of 10 invasive species specialists. Chad Hiens is an associate professor of biology at Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato. After discovering birds and bird watching as a teenager, he expanded his studies to plants in graduate school, which made him aware of pollinators and other small creatures. Now, his focus has expanded to include spiders. Hiens is currently mapping spider distributions in Minnesota and is a contributing editor to Bug Guide, where he's improving the spider portions of the guide. He is also the curator of the Spiders of Minnesota project on iNaturalist. Chad and Angie, welcome. And thanks for joining us on Smarty Plants.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having me.
So to get started, can you explain what is a spider and how is it different than other insects?
You already had me at other insects. They're not an insect at all. Insects have 6 legs and 3 body parts, and spiders have 2 body parts and 8 legs, which makes it a little easier.
Yes, that does.
Insects typically also have wings.
Most
of them, or they are there and then they're modified into something else, or they've lost them secondarily. But wings are also a major difference. Have you ever seen a flying spider?
Not with wings.
Does ballooning count?
Yeah, I was going to say they balloon, but that's a whole other topic.
So then why do you think people are so scared of spiders? What makes them so scary?
I think there's a lot of things about spiders that maybe lend themselves to their creepy, crawly nature or something like that. The many-legged thing is always part of it. So, insects kind of get lumped in there, too. There are some insects that are creepy, and you increase the legs, and, people get a little scared of centipedes, too. So the legs have something to do with it. But, they're kind of hairy. They've got extra eyes. So if you look at them up close, maybe they're a little scary. They got fangs. They can bite. They have venom. So maybe people have just a healthy respect of them. And then there's sometimes unpredictable, fast-moving, and that itself can kind of contribute to, the jump factor.
Yeah, I would say they're fast, right? So that is a big deal. You typically don't have like a butterfly dropping down on you.
Correct.
From the ceiling, where all of a sudden you could be sitting there and then here comes,
And walking into a web, that sometimes that's enough to get someone screaming and spinning in circles.
I did that on yesterday when I was down in Winona, first right into the woods, right in my face. Yep. And my reaction, hands are shaking.
See, and now I'd be like, okay, who made that? And I'd be looking for the spider.
Yep. And then, of course, you can never find it.
No,
right.
So you just see the web.
Right, and it may be on you, so, you don't know.
Wow, that kind of gets into the back of your head. Then you can't
Right?
do anything, right? Then you might as well just go back to the car, close the doors, roll up the windows, and go home.
Yeah, I can't be doing that every day. No. But yeah, that is some of they tend to kind of show up unexpectedly or
come out of a dark crevice.
Yep. Or you turn on the lights in the morning and, there's a spider on the floor. It was just hanging out in the house while all the lights were off because it can see. So, yeah.
Dangling from the ceiling in the middle of a room. You walk right into them. I mean, I could see that getting somebody.
Yes. So there's lots of things that could play into it. So with that, like we talked that there's a couple that we find outside, a couple that we find inside. How many spiders species are found in Minnesota? And are there any that are considered like non-native or invasive? Because we kind of cover a lot of invasive insects and Smarty Plants before. So like, are there some that are invasive?
So I'm going to hedge my number. You asked a number of questions there. There's 548 species that we actually know occur in Minnesota or have occurred in Minnesota. The real number of how many are really here, that's part of what I'm trying to figure out. But 548 that we know of. And I had to go and look at my list in preparation for this podcast. 510 of those are native to Minnesota. And then there are additional species. We have 25 species that are found here in Minnesota that are not even native to the United States but have gotten established. Some of them are just in local populations. They're only found in a couple places. Others are very widespread. They're found throughout Minnesota. They've just become naturalized, and they do very well. And then there's 13 other species that are not native to Minnesota, but they're also not from Europe. A lot of the European ones are the ones that we see in and around our houses. So the cellar spiders with the long legs that kind of hang down in our basements, those are actually all from Europe. And we have 3 species that we have here. They're all from Europe. None of them are actually native to Minnesota, but they do very well around us. House spiders, which are oftentimes in basins and make these tubular retreats. They kind of hide back in crack and crevice. If you see a little tunnel that kind of goes back, that's probably a house spider. Also not native to North America, but they do very well around people. And so wherever people are, you can find those.
So one thing you said that interests me, so you said that you think of how things spread, and that's one of the things that we do here at the MDA is we are tracking the spread and we're concerned with pathways and how things move. You said that some spiders stay, like there are localized populations. Can you give me an example of that? And like what keeps a spider population localized?
Some of that is just the nature of the spider themselves. So brown recluse, I get a lot of people concerned about brown recluse. It has a venom that's medically significant. You don't want to have a run-in with them. But then we only have 4 records that I know of in the state of Minnesota, so not very common, not likely to occur. But that species, just its own personality, they don't wander far. They are indeed reclusive. They stay kind of in one particular area. So you might end up with, at some point here, even though we're well north of their typical range, I think they're up into southern Iowa at this point, but up here in Minnesota, a basement that's heated, if we end up with a bunch of spiders, a bunch of brown recluses, they might establish a population in one basement. And they might not wander or spread out from there to the rest of the neighborhood or across the state because they just don't wander very far. And they do kind of control themselves in their own population because they'll eat each other.
And so then that population would just kind of self-sustain itself?
Self-sustain, but not really spread.
Okay.
And others, maybe they'll spread, but they spread very slowly. There's just, if they live in a basement, then that's very appropriate. But, how easily is that spread to the outside? Probably not as easily. Whereas you have other spiders that do very well in, say, a woodland environment or something like that, and we have woodlands all over Minnesota. So that's a species that its appropriate habitat is just about everywhere, and if they're established outside where that is, they can spread to new places fairly easy.
Nice. So you talked a little bit about the different categories of spiders. Some are native, some are from Europe, some are non-native, some are the individual populations. So what is the difference between invasive and non-native? If we want to kind of
Angie
give a little
probably deals with this a
description?
lot with insects for
Yep.
sure.
I do. So, I mean, typically, and if you go, in the literature, you go online, there's so many different terms for invasive and non-native, and what does that mean, and how are they classified? And typically, invasive has a negative connotation to it, right? So, it's going to have some impact on human health, on the environment. It's causing trouble while it's here. Things can be non-native and be in Minnesota and just kind of fade into the background or become naturalized over time, and they're here and they're not really doing anything. They're just living, and they're reproducing, but they're not particularly affecting anything. So that's kind of how I classify things invasive, non-native. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say whenever you're dealing with invasive, it has some kind of impact on the ecology or relationships or food webs or something like that. They're going to have some kind of impact. And there's quite a few naturalized spiders that we have, as far as we can tell, doesn't seem to disrupt anything. We haven't seen any changes in species diversity. It's not like this showed up and then all of a sudden 5 different spider species disappeared. Mind you, I might be the only one who might notice that. But but that's probably true. Is like if it's causing major shifts and changes in things, that's probably invasive. If it's changing the entire community, that's invasive. But there's a lot that become naturalized. Even if anybody was to go out and just look at their house and just walk around and look at the siding, you're going to find 2 non-native species dominate that environment. The Asian wall jumper, which as its name implies is not from Minnesota, and the zebra jumper, which is from Europe. And the 2 of them actually, we could say, well, the zebra jumper was here first, and now the Asian wall jumper is everywhere. And someone could probably even do a study on, well, who wins if they're competing? Because they sometimes co-occur, and then other times it's dominated by one species or the other. So there are some interesting things there, but both of them I would consider naturalized because away from the building, you don't even see them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one species that I know has come up in the news in the past is Joro spider as being an invasive not in Minnesota. But do you think it could become established in Minnesota, or do you think it could kind of get here randomly in some way?
Could it get here some random way? Absolutely.
Yes.
I am convinced that animals have a way of spreading to places that they're not supposed to be in ways that we don't expect. I have had scorpions delivered to me that somebody found. They just show up sometimes. Joro spiders are not native to the United States, and yet a population got established kind of in the southeast, and it's been gradually spreading north. It's still restricted. If I remember correctly, it's still east of the Appalachians for the most part.
Yes.
And it's a big spider. It makes a big web, and we do have a native member of that genus that is in southern United States. But this was new and unheard of, and it is slowly spreading. And the question is, how far will it spread? And like all creatures, they're going to have some kind of limits in terms of temperature tolerance. Minnesota winters, if we should get a real one, it's been a couple of years, but if we should get a real one, that really can knock out a lot of things that, hey, this seemed like a great place to be for the summer, but when the winter comes, they go, this is not a good place to be. I think there's some Minnesotans do that too, though.
Yes. So is the Joro spider in the same, because what we get reported as the Joro spider very often is that very large, I think is the genus, is it Agriope?
Argiope.
Argiope, that's
Yep.
how you pronounce it. Okay.
Or Argiope, or I'm not too fussy,
Yeah,
but
okay.
Argiope is how
Yes.
the spelling is.
And it's that big, beautiful spider that you find in the garden that makes the web with the zigzag in it.
Yep.
Are they related?
They're both orb weavers.
Okay.
Yep, they're both orb weavers, so that you could argue that they're related, but they're not in the same genus. And if you ever look at the silk on a Joro spider, it's in the golden silk orb weavers, and their silk is actually very yellow in color. Whereas anybody who's looked at one of the garden spiders, whether it's the banded or the black and yellow one, those are pretty much, it's straight up white. Yep. And that's the one that we would expect. But when the Joro gets all the press,
Right.
people forget that, oh, no, we have big orb weavers here in Minnesota that are native too.
And so with that, the Joro spider being non-native, it is also invasive, correct? It is causing some trouble in the southeast amongst the native spider populations. Is that correct?
I think they're still trying to figure that
Okay.
out. I think that's one of the big questions. Like, is it naturalizing or is it actually going to shift things? And how will it compete with the native member of that genus?
Okay.
Yep. And since I don't have to deal with Joro spiders in Minnesota, I have to tell you, I am not an expert on the Joro spider.
Well, you might be.
I might have to be eventually.
Sending them to you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm ready to learn something new.
Perfect. And talking about Angie, so when you do find these large spiders, especially these ones that you think could potentially be a Joro spider, you can take a picture of it and send it in to the Department of Agriculture to our Report a Pest line. We have a website that you can visit, which is www.mda.state.mn.us/ and all one word here, report a pest. And then you can go onto our website and click on send us an email, fill out our online form, which is very easy, or give us a phone call, and Angie will give you a call back.
Angie will get a hold of Chad probably
to then give you a call back on
back.
what exactly species it is that you have. But yes, by all means, if you see a spider or an insect or anything else that seems unusual, please do take a picture and send it in to us and let us know, because you never know, it could be something new and potentially something that's an invasive. So continuing with the non-native and invasive spiders here, are there concerns that non-native spiders are going to affect our the forest ecosystem and besides, we've talked a little bit about our home ecosystems, that they don't do much for that, but more on the forest ecosystems and landscape level?
Well, when I started all this, I didn't necessarily know what was going on in terms of spiders, and you start collecting and you start looking at those sorts of things. And one of the phenomena that I saw when I first started doing this back in 2009, as I started collecting, I found one type of spider called forgive the Latin, Enoplugnafa ovata, and on iNaturalist they call it the candy-striped cobweaver, I think is what the common name is. And it actually, some of them have pink stripes on them and some of them are yellow with black spots. There's two different versions. We find them kind of in Minnesota. But when I started in 2009-10, it was only in the eastern Minnesota. So I'd seen it in Winona. I'd seen it further east. And then as the years progressed, it finally started popping up more in my neck of the woods, which is Blue Earth County, Mankato. So at this point, and it shows up in Duluth, and now it's actually up the North Shore, so you can find it up in the North Shore. So it's been kind of fun, actually, as I've been watching. This species is actually spreading east to west across the state. We actually have records from the western part of Minnesota now, from Lincoln County and Murray County. And it's actually known from, and I wrote it down because I knew I was going to get asked about, 27 of Minnesota's 87 counties. So it is slowly spreading. Now, and it's fairly common in woodland understories. That's typically where I find it. So if I take a sweep net and I go through a herbaceous understory in one of our beautiful woodlands, you sweep through there and you pull out, and there's going to be Enoplugnafa ovata. Anywhere east of the Minnesota River Valley down to Mankato or whatever, you're going to find them fairly easily at this point. But I started noticing that wherever I was sweeping that, I was also finding less of some of the other things that I was finding in my neck of the woods. The only problem is that because I'm several counties further west and that it's just the spider community is different, or is it actually having an impact? And I had a student who attempted to try and answer that with a brief research project, and we basically came to the conclusion of we can't tell. And we just don't know enough to say, well, is this actually impacting things? And it's found throughout the eastern United States, and a lot of other people have kind of said, well, it just kind of fit in and slid in there. But I'm not as convinced. I think there's probably some effect with that one. But is it significant? Probably not. And I'm not sure anybody cares about, oh, no, we lost a spider today. Not as many people notice that. There's other spider species, though, that have popped up. The cross orb weaver, which is Arrhenius diadomatus, It is the first record from Minnesota is September of 2016, and that one popped up here in St. Paul. And then over the coming years, so the next one was found in Rochester in 2018, Austin in 2020, in Dodge County in 22, made it to Mankato in 2023. And at this point, that spider is largely, like most of the records, come out of Rochester and the Twin Cities. And the Twin Cities area, it's expanding. So it's added Washington County and Dakota County and Scott County, so it's hitting all the western suburbs as well. And that species is slowly spreading. And everyone's like, oh, wow. And it's a really pretty spider. I'll give it that. But is it having impact? And I've heard very few people concerned about it having an impact on some of our other large native orb weavers. But that one's probably going to spread before. It'll be across the entire state before the Joro spider ever gets here, would be my guess.
That one's fairly robust, too, correct?
She's got some heft to her. Yeah. Yep.
I think we've had a few, now that I learned about this spider, we've had a few reports of that and reported pests this year from Washington County.
Yep.
And so now that I know about it, I'm kind of excited, and I think I'm going to I'll see it more. Because it is a large spider, and it makes a fairly big web as well.
Yep.
Right?
Very large web.
So there are some scary spiders in other areas of the country, like spiders like the brown recluse, and we're talking about like the black widow. And would these ever establish here?
So those are the ones that everybody's really concerned about. Brown recluse, we kind of already talked about a little bit. I'm not concerned about it getting totally established and spreading across the state. Black widows are kind of a fun little puzzle because when I first got into it, I was trying to figure out, well, do we have black widows in the state or not? And there's some old literature records from the southeastern corner. And as far as I can tell, we have a native black widow species here in Minnesota. And it is normally the only counties that I know that it occurs in is like Wabasha, south along the Mississippi, and then as far east as Fillmore. So kind of the southeastern corner is the only place where we have black widows. I'm 0 for 2. I have looked for that dumb species a number of times. I can't find it. So the likelihood of somebody just bumbling into one probably isn't very good. I've been assured by some other DNR personnel that, well, you just have to look kind of down in the grass or put your hand into a gopher hole. Well, I don't know if that's worth it for a black widow. So I haven't touched that one. But that being said, we've actually had four different widow species that have actually been recorded here in Minnesota. Most times they're stowaways. So black widows are like cousins of other cobweb spiders, so they like dark places. They like to hide in corners. And what happens is they get shipped with plants. And so we look forward to April, and the garden centers are opening up their doors. And look at that. They've got things blooming already. Well, they didn't start those in Minnesota probably. A lot of those get shipped in from places further south, or California or Florida or something like that. And we get stowaways. So we've had brown widows, western widows, and southern widows in addition to the native one that happens here. None of those are established except maybe in a greenhouse. Because again, they don't do so well in our nice cold winters. So those things protect us.
Are all the widows... do they all have venom? Like the one that everybody thinks of, the classic black one with the little red hourglass on it. Are they all similar? They're in the same genus, and they all have the venom that can, if you're immunocompromised or maybe if you're a child, you can react badly to it.
They're all in the genus Latrodectus. They all have it's a neurotoxin, and people who are young, old, or immune compromised are the ones that are greatest at risk. A lot of people ask me if I've ever been bitten by a spider. No. and most spiders don't really want to bite you. So, I mean, my students are always shocked when I pull out the giant spider and then just let it walk across my hands. It has no interest in biting me. And that would be even true of a black widow, no interest in biting me. That being said, if I pinched it between my finger and my thumb, it'll bite. And so you really have to you'd really have to create a situation that would make the spider bite. So likelihood of getting bitten by a black widow in Minnesota is extremely low.
Which spider are you using, by the way? You got me there with the one you're letting it crawl on your hand while you're talking to your students?
Oh,
Which one is
there's
that?
so many, but I really like to use the big garden spiders or the big orb weavers because they just kind of have that shock value. And most people think big spider means more dangerous spider. And honestly, the big ones are actually some of the best ones to handle because they're pretty relaxed. They're not feeling as threatened. They're mostly just trying to get away from you. But you can just do hand over hand. They'll just walk across your hand. And the orb weavers, because they have that thick silk, they'll drop from your hand and just kind of hang there. And then they'll be like, whoa, this is not where I want to be. So they'll crawl back up. And so, it has this fascination for I don't know. Kids are more into this than the adults. I find if I do kids programs, the kids are like, oh, cool, can I hold it? The parents are like, I'll be outside if you need me.
Yep. So talking more about those, like some of those larger ones and holding them and kind of the showy, large, fuzzy ones with long legs. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the menacing looking ones? Like for me, I know I've found fishing spiders in my house, in my basement, but some people think they see a lot of wolf spiders sometimes too. So can you talk a little bit about those two?
Well, probably most wolf spiders that people see are actually the fishing spiders, and those are our largest. So we have 5 species of they're in the genus Dolomedes, and because they're so large, they're probably seen by more people, and some of them are comfortable being in your home, in your basement, on the outside of your house. But with the legs and everything, like a female Dolomedes tenebrosus is about the size of your palm, with the legs stretched out and everything. And they are active hunters, and so they are capable of fast movement. They have to be fast in order to catch their prey. And so maybe that adds a little bit to the scary factor because not only is it a big spider, but it also moves quickly. But as they're fishing spiders because a lot of them you find close to water, and that's true of striped fishing spiders or six-spotted fishing spiders. They're oftentimes real close to water, but probably one of the most common ones in Minnesota is Dolomedes tenebrosus, which is the dark fishing spider. And anywhere you find woodlands, you will find dark fishing spiders, and they're oftentimes hunting right on the bark. They're very camouflaged, and if you have a cabin in the woods, you'll probably have a nice close encounter with that one.
Why do they call them fishing spiders? Will they catch minnows or small fish or?
So I always think that the six-spotted fishing spiders, which is Dolomedes triton, I always find that one seems to be on the water's surface. So on the lily pads or near the lily pads, and they will go after minnows that are underneath the water. They will catch them. Dolomedes tenebrosus, again, that dark fishing spider that you find in the woods, no, there's no minnows in the forest. So they're not against it if they find something like that. But normally anything smaller than the spider is fair game. So they'll go for that. Dolomedes scriptus I oftentimes find in rocky areas near water. And then there's another one. There's one that we just found last summer, Vittatus. It's always found along streams. So there's they have kind of their own little microhabitats that you find. But tenebrosus, the big dark fishing spider, that one is kind of a generalist. And so it's found near water but well away from water too.
I mean, that one is large and, I'm not going to lie, kind of scary looking.
Yeah, my wife's not good with that one. She's grown accustomed to most of the other spiders. If there's a big one of those in the house, she's on the next floor. She's somewhere else.
So, okay, we have those big spiders, but you see people like, if you go to the University of Minnesota to the museum, there have tarantulas. I have a couple. We have actually one of our team members has a tarantula in a terrarium. Do they make good pets? Is there a risk of, people buying spiders for pets and then them getting out and then them become establishing, or most of these types of spiders not gonna make it here? Yeah,
tarantulas are not going to fare well in Minnesota. They might survive a summer, but the winter's not for them. Most tarantulas, the larger-bodied spiders, they're longer-lived and they do much better in warmer climates. So most of the tarantulas that you see in the pet trade, you'll see them. They're pulled out of the tropics. Probably the appeal of them is that they are big spiders. Some of them make great pets. I personally have a Chilean rosehair tarantula in my lab, and I kind of use that to kind of break down barriers because you can pick her up and you can have her in your hand. But in terms of, like, okay, but how fun is it? Well, there she is in your hand, sitting in your hand, doing the thing in the hand.
She's not doing anything.
And really, that's probably good news. You don't want her to be, running all of a sudden abruptly up into your neck region, for example. That wouldn't be good. But other people like the tarantulas just because they are kind of fun. You throw some food in there, they come rushing out of their little burrow and grab whatever the food is and drag it under. And some people like them for their aggression and everything. But those big spiders aren't going to fare well here in Minnesota. And even in the pet trade, I think from what I've heard, some tarantulas are even they're kind of being watched a little bit in terms of population. So they're kind of concerned that the pet trade might actually be negatively impacting native populations. Because I think Chilean rosehairs in particular are a little harder to get at this point because we're not as successful in captive breeding of them as we are with other pets.
Nice. I still don't think I'm going to have one as a pet. I'll just keep finding the fishing spiders in my house and put them right back outside and hope they don't make it back in.
We do have one spider that's kind of like a tarantula that is native, and that's called the black purseweb spider. And the first one that was found in this state I found back in, I don't remember what year that was now, 2012, at the Black Dog Preserve here on the south side of the cities, and was underneath a DNR or a Fish and Wildlife Service person's boot. I saw it come running out and went under their boot, and I said, I think you have a new spider for the state under your boot, and there it was. But males you'll find typically in June, maybe into July, they're out looking for females. The females never leave their home, and they live in like a web that's up against the trunk of a tree or in the leaf litter, and you never see them. And they might live like 3-4 years, whereas the males rarely live more than a year. So I would love to find a female purseweb spider to have as a pet because they just kind of make this silk little nest, and then when any prey walks across it, they actually bite up through the silk and grab their prey, haul it inside, and then patch that up and eat it.
Huh.
That just sounds really cool.
It does sound pretty cool.
Yeah. And the females in purseweb spiders, it's funny because the male was described something like 80 years before the female. Because the males you find all the time, there's the male, but where's the female? Nobody knew where the female was. The nests, the webs are so hidden that we don't know where they are. And here in Minnesota, I think there's only a handful of counties with records of that species. So it's one of my most sought after. I try and get out in June, try and get into the eastern part just to see if I can find one of those. But they'd be fun.
How does the male find the female? So we talk about in the insects, and we use this in the insect world, and we use this as part of our survey method. We use pheromones. So we use those to bring in, we have traps that'll be baited with a female pheromone to bring in males or vice versa. Do spiders have that?
Pheromones. Yep, that's the way to do it.
Excellent.
A lot of times the pheromones are just deposited right on the silk.
Nice. That's so talking about more of we talked about these ones that might look like tarantulas in our state and being in the forest. It's still great to get out. How are spiders beneficial? So we talked a lot about some of the things and some of what makes them scary, but how are they beneficial for us and for our ecosystem?
All you have to do is look at an orb weaver's web and count the mosquitoes. And you'll figure out exactly why spiders are good, because it's not just the orb web spiders that are catching them, but it's all the other spiders. And if you don't like spiders, good news, the spiders are eating spiders too. So I read some study that said that, well, if you're looking at it pound for pound, really, spiders are the most significant carnivore in any ecosystem because they are actually eating more insect biomass and more spider biomass and everything else than anything else really is in that ecosystem because they're pretty low in the food chain, and yet they're controlling a lot of these other insects. So if we have a big hatch of some particular insects, you can guarantee there are spiders right there. All you got to do is go next to a lake where all the aquatic larval stages give rise to the winged adults, and you will find, wow, there's a lot of spiders here. Well, there's a reason there's a lot of spiders there. There's a lot of food there for them. So they're great at helping to control insects, and generally they're very good.
And I would imagine, I don't know, that they're also food for other insects in the food chain, right? Or not other insects, I'm sorry, other animals in the food chain.
Birds.
Yep.
Birds are a big one. Yep. They oftentimes eat them. I think I read something that said that there are even some birds that at certain stages of their chick's development actually target spiders more, which is just kind of interesting to think about. Like, well, getting to be a teenager, better start feeding them spiders now, That'll get them to shut up. I don't know.
Maybe I should feed my teenage boy spiders. I could get plenty off the side of the house.
That might take some convincing.
Yeah, I think so.
A special casserole at Angie's house tonight.
New recipe.
It's probably coming at some point. It's inevitable.
My kind of hot dish.
So in going with some of you were talking about wanting to find one of the tarantulas and have tarantula-like ones in Minnesota for yourself. Are there any spiders that are your favorite or that you like a lot?
I got really into spiders. Probably I got hooked because of jumping spiders. And there are some very plain-looking jumping spiders, but there are just some absolutely spectacular jumping spiders too in terms of coloration. One of my favorites is up north. It doesn't have a common name. If I had to give it a common name, it would be the purple shiny jumper, because it is iridescent, purpley, metallic, and then it has bright yellow legs with black racing stripes. It is very cool. But you got to go up and you got to walk around in like sedge meadows and that sort of thing in northern Minnesota to try and find that one. But others have stripes. Some of them have cool ornamentation on their legs. The males actually do visual displays when they're trying to convince the female that they are a mating partner, not breakfast. And so they do things where they're waving their legs, and so they've got fancy little iridescent ornamentation on their legs that they wave back and forth in front. So and they have forward-pointing eyes. So I feel like when I'm talking to them, they're looking at me. It's like we're making a connection, that kind of thing. But jumping spiders were what really got me hooked. I definitely am a big fan of wolf spiders. And most times if someone asks me, what's your favorite spider, my favorite spider is whatever the new one is. Part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out what spiders are found here in Minnesota, and if I find one that I've never seen before, I don't know what this is, that's a very big moment for me because I'm excited. Well, even if it's not new to the state, it's new to me. I've never seen this before, and now I can kind of get a feel for, okay, where is this one found, and takes me down a whole new other route of things to study and learn about. So that's what I like to do.
Nice. Do you have a favorite, Angie?
No.
I like the ones that are white and pink. They're like on flowers a lot of times. What are those?
You're thinking of goldenrod crab spiders.
Yeah.
Yes, the crab spiders.
Spiders are cool.
They are very pretty. And
Yeah,
they're
they
usually
are.
on some very bright flowers and stuff. So it is nice to see them in the garden.
I do love the big garden spider, the black and yellow one. I mean, it is really, really pretty. And I will stop and watch and look. I just don't want that one in my house. That's all.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I get that. I realize I am abnormal.
Or
Yes.
on me.
Yep.
When I don't want to walk into that web.
So you're not gonna have one hand walk across your.
It would take some convincing
Okay.
at this point.
All right. Have you ever held a tarantula?
I did hold the one when I started in grad school at the University of Minnesota. I did hold the one in the.
And live to tell about
I
it.
did. I didn't die.
Yep. Well,
I'm not sure that I would go back and do that on a regular basis, though. But, you got to save face.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I dare you.
Yep.
You probably got double dared.
Probably.
Yeah. They probably had to take it to double dare before you got in there. But, yep.
That's okay. You eventually held it. They're fun. Like you said, they're not worried about doing anything. Just those larger ones are quite docile and everything. So that's what makes them fun.
Okay, I want to address a couple urban legends that you hear. So people will say, I got bit by a spider. I have 3 bites in a row on my leg, on my arm. A spider must have bit me in the night. Is that a real thing?
So I get asked these questions a lot, like, okay, if there's a red dot on me, or if there's three bites in a row, is that a spider? You know, it's swelled up. So all of our spiders, well, I should say not all, most of our spiders here in Minnesota do have venom glands and certainly could bite you. Some of them are so small, their fangs, if they bit you, you wouldn't even notice it. And different people have different sensitivities to different venoms. And that's one of the things that makes this kind of tricky is like, well, you know, someone got bit, no reaction. Someone got bit by the same spider. They puffed up like a Cheeto, you know. That's an issue. But there's a lot of stuff I've read out there that says we don't really know it's a spider, and we should be careful just always just saying, well, it's a spider bite. Because we all know the centipedes are just as bad. No, I'm just kidding. But there are other venomous creatures that could certainly bite you. But most times, like if you want a spider to bite you, like I always say, like I think you could get a spider bite if you got one in between your body and your clothes. If somehow it got down there, I'm not saying anyone would put that. I'm not trying to freak anybody out in this room, okay? But if you got a spider in between your clothes and now your clothes are shifting or whatever, and they're freaking out a little bit, you know, I might freak out a little bit. I might be prone to biting if I thought I was threatened, you know, in a tight enclosed space. And so you could certainly have a spider bite. Now, did that end up being 3? I mean, what does the 3 represent? Does that mean the spider was skidding across your skin as it was biting? And I don't know. I'm always hesitant. I always want to say I would like to see the spider before we, you know, put them in the lineup and convince ourselves that it is a spider.
Because I feel like they get a bad rap for a lot of bites.
Oh, they do.
Okay.
They do. And a lot of people react to other things, too. And centipedes are certainly one of those as well. I have a hard time getting a spider to bite me. So, like, you really do have to hold them down or pinch them or something before they start really using their fangs to try and defend themselves. So, it can happen. I'm not saying it can't.
And then there's the average human swallows 6 spiders in their sleep every year.
Well, I like to think I'm above average, but no.
Do you know where that comes from? And is there any data to support that?
That's my issue with that. Is I have heard that a number of times, and number one, I can't see a spider thinking this is a good place to go. I should go in here. I should go in here, you know, inside somebody's mouth. There's air coming in and out. It's moist. It's a dark cave. I don't see spiders going in there. And what are the odds of it actually going in somebody's mouth? That means they're sleeping with their mouth open in the right place, right underneath that. And that happens 6 times. How often? 6 times a night?
It was 6 times
or 6 times lifetime?
I think it was 6 times in a year.
Probably a year.
There's probably some different versions out there.
Probably.
I just don't think it's very likely. I think that you can chalk that one up as an urban legend.
All right. We're going to debunk that one.
And unless somebody, I don't think there's any money in actually proving that one wrong, unfortunately. So it's probably going to be out there for a while. I just don't imagine us we got 1,000 people together, put them asleep, and then we had a bunch of spiders inserted on the ceiling, and then we tracked how many actually dropped into their mouths the night for an entire year. And we have proven that there's no money in that, and I think you'd have a hard time finding 1,000 volunteers.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
So.
That would be a hard one to get the volunteers to come in.
Yep.
All right, so that was most of my
So you can
questions.
sleep easily tonight.
So now that we have some of the myths kind of debunked a little bit and talked about, and hopefully everybody kind of feels that spiders are not scary, they're very beneficial. We can all agree that mosquitoes are horrible, and we are happy to have the spiders eating them. So thank you, Angie and Chad, for discussing the spiders in Minnesota and trying to curb some of our fears that we have. This has been Smarty Plants, a podcast from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Our producer is Brittany Ravel. Our editor is Larry Schumacher. And I have been your host. You can learn more about pests and other invasive species that affect our environment at www.mda.state.mn.us. And while you head to our website, we'll be working on the next episode of Smarty Plants. See you there.